I wasn't supposed to be there. I had a meeting at work that ran late, so I figured I'd grab some dinner afterward. When I stepped into that restaurant, the last thing I expected to see was Tracy, my wife of 12 years, sitting there with Kate, holding hands across the table. At first, it didn't register. I mean, I knew Kate. She was one of Tracy's close friends. They hung out all the time, but it was mostly in that girlfriend way. Nothing weird about it. Or so I thought. But then Kate leaned in, her face too close to Tracy's, and I froze. My whole body went cold when I saw Tracy lean right back and kiss her. It wasn't just some friendly peck either. No. This was intimate, personal, and too damn familiar. I stood there, heart pounding, watching my wife with another woman. How the hell had I missed this? I wasn't loud. I didn't go storming up to them, flipping tables or shouting like some crazy person. I just stood there watching. I think part of me was hoping I was seeing things wrong. That I could blink, and it'd be just a mistake. But no. It was real. The waiter asked if I wanted a table, and that's when Tracy saw me. Her face went pale, like she'd seen a ghost, but she didn't pull back from Kate. She didn't rush over to explain or anything. She just stared at me wide-eyed and said, "Ron, this isn't what it looks like." Oh, but it was exactly what it looked like. I didn't say anything at first. I was too numb. Just standing there, staring at Tracy like I didn't even know who she was anymore. And Kate? She had the nerve to look guilty, like she had been caught sneaking into someone's house or something. Not like she was kissing my wife. "Ron, please. Can we talk?" Tracy's voice cracked, and that's when I snapped out of it. "Talk?" I repeated, my voice low. "What exactly are we talking about, Tracy?" I could feel the eyes of everyone around us, the whispers. I didn't care. I just kept looking at her, trying to wrap my head around it. She was supposed to be my wife. She was supposed to love me. And here she was, kissing another woman in plain sight, not even trying to hide it. "We didn't mean for you to find out like this," Tracy started, like that was supposed to make me feel better. Kate stood up then, stammering something about leaving, but I didn't care what she had to say. It was Tracy I needed answers from. The one I gave over a decade of my life to, the one who was now apparently living some double life. "You didn't mean for me to find out this way?" I was louder now. I didn't care. "So you were just gonna keep sneaking around until when, huh? Until you were ready to let me in on it?" Tracy looked like she was about to cry, but I wasn't feeling sorry for her. Not one bit. "I still love you, Ron," she said softly, taking a step toward me, but I backed up. "I swear. This is different. I need time to figure things out. I need to explore this part of me." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Explore? What the hell was I supposed to be then? A backup plan? Hearing Tracy say she needed time to explore made my stomach turn. It was like she thought I was just supposed to sit around and wait while she figured out whether she wanted me or her new girlfriend. "So what, Tracy? You want to explore this new side of yourself, and I'm just supposed to hang around and see if you decide I'm good enough?" My voice was shaking, but it wasn't with sadness, it was anger. The kind that creeps up on you slow until it feels like it's going to explode out of your chest. She reached out for me, but I pulled back. I didn't want her touching me. Not after what I just saw. "I'm not saying that, Ron. It's just, I don't want to lose you. I love you, but this thing with Kate, it's different. It doesn't mean I don't care about you." There it was. The classic "I love you, but," and that's when I realized I was never going to be enough for her. Not anymore. She had Kate now, this whole other part of her life I didn't know about, and somehow, I was supposed to be okay with being second choice? I couldn't believe the words coming out of her mouth. "You don't want to lose me? Tracy, you already lost me the second you started sneaking around behind my back." She opened her mouth to argue, but I wasn't interested in hearing her excuses. I turned and walked out of that restaurant without another word. Let her and Kate figure it out. I wasn't going to stick around while she explored anything. By the time I got home, the shock started to wear off, and the anger hit me full force. I couldn't believe I had been so blind. All the late nights, the girls' weekends, she took with Kate. The signs were there, and I was just too stupid to see them. I grabbed my phone, and with my hands shaking, I called my lawyer. It was time to file for divorce. I wasn't going to be anyone's backup plan. The decision to call my lawyer felt like ripping off a bandage, fast and brutal. I didn't think twice about it. I couldn't. I knew if I hesitated, if I let myself get caught up in Tracy's tears and half-apologies, I'd fall right back into whatever game she was playing. And I wasn't going to do that. My lawyer, Greg, answered on the second ring. "Hey Ron, what's up? It's been a while." "Greg, I need to file for divorce," I said, the words coming out rough, like they were stuck in my throat. Saying it out loud made it feel real, like there was no going back now. And honestly, I didn't want to go back. Not after what I saw. Greg paused for a second, probably to let it sink in. "All right, Ron. You sure about this?" "Yeah, I'm sure," I muttered, pacing my living room. "I caught Tracy with someone. She's been cheating." My voice cracked a little on the last word. There was something so damn humiliating about saying it out loud, even to a lawyer who had heard it all before. Greg didn't ask for details. He just gave a short sigh, then said, "Okay. I'll get the paperwork ready. Do you want to serve her right away?" Right away. Those two words felt heavy. I pictured Tracy at work, completely clueless about what was coming, still probably thinking she had time to figure things out, like she had all the power in the world. She didn't expect me to act this fast. She probably thought she had me wrapped around her finger like always. "Yeah. Serve her at work," I said firmly. I knew it would catch her off guard, and maybe a part of me wanted that. I wanted her to know she didn't get to control how this ended. When I hung up, I felt this strange mix of relief and dread. Filing for divorce was the first real step toward cutting her out of my life, but it wasn't going to be that easy. I knew Tracy wasn't going to just let this go. And sure enough, a few days later, I found out I was right. I was sitting at my desk at work when my phone started buzzing non-stop. Tracy was calling. I didn't answer. Then came the texts, dozens of them, one after another. She was furious. "Are you kidding me, Ron? You had me served at work. You couldn't even talk to me first? I was going to tell you everything, but you didn't give me a chance." There it was. She was mad, but she still didn't think she'd done anything wrong. I felt a small bitter smile creep onto my face. Yeah, this was going to get ugly. I knew Tracy was going to blow up, but seeing those texts pouring in, one after the other, hit harder than I expected. Each one was filled with the same excuses, the same twisted logic. She wasn't mad because she cheated. She was mad because I had the audacity to do something about it. The phone buzzed again, and I finally gave in, picking it up. I could almost feel the anger radiating through the line when I answered. "You served me at work?" "At work, Ron? Are you trying to humiliate me?" Tracy's voice was sharp, her anger cutting through any of the guilt or shame I thought she might have felt. "Humiliate you?" I shot back. "You're mad about that? After what you did? You're the one sneaking around with Kate, and you're upset because I didn't give you a heads up about the divorce." Her silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't going to take responsibility for anything. Not the cheating, not the lies, nothing. "I was going to tell you," she finally said, her tone softening, like that was supposed to make everything better. I didn't know how to." "You didn't know how?" I laughed bitterly. "You were planning to tell me when, Tracy? After you and Kate had a nice little vacation together? After you figured things out and decided whether you wanted me or her? That's what I was supposed to wait around for." She tried to speak, but I wasn't interested in hearing it. "You've been lying to me for months, maybe even years. And now you expect me to sit around and listen to your excuses? No. I'm done." I could hear her starting to cry on the other end, but it wasn't the kind of crying that made me feel sorry for her. It was the kind that made me even angrier, because she was trying to play the victim now. She wasn't crying because she felt bad about what she did. She was crying because she got caught, and I wasn't sticking around like she thought I would. "Ron, please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I still love you. I do. This thing with Kate, it's different, but it doesn't mean I don't love you." I clenched the phone so hard I thought it might break. I had heard enough. "Well, guess what, Tracy? I'm not going to be your backup plan. You made your choice, and now you have to live with it." I hung up before she could say another word. I was done letting her try to twist everything, done with the games. She could have Kate, and I'd move on with my life, no matter how hard that might be. But as the days passed, I realized moving on wasn't going to be easy. Tracy and I had a lot of mutual friends, and word of the divorce spread fast. And just like that, lines started being drawn. Friends I thought would be there for me were suddenly on her side, talking about how confused Tracy was, how she was figuring things out, like that excused everything she'd done. It was like I had become the villain in my own story, and somehow, Tracy was the one people were feeling sorry for. The thing that stung the most wasn't the divorce itself. It was how quickly people started picking sides, and most of them weren't picking mine. Friends I'd known for years, people who had been there through everything, suddenly had all this sympathy for Tracy. She was confused, they said. Going through something. Like that was a good enough reason to destroy our marriage. I'd get texts and calls from mutual friends, but instead of checking on me, they'd ask if I'd talked to Tracy, if I was sure about the divorce. It was almost like they thought I was the one making a rash decision, like I was overreacting. Man, you have to understand, she's figuring herself out, one friend, Steve, told me over a beer. It's not like she cheated with another guy. This is different. You can work through it. That line, "It's not like she cheated with another guy," made me want to smash the bottle over his head. Like somehow her being with a woman was less of a betrayal? Like that was supposed to make it easier? She cheated, I said, my voice low, trying to keep from losing it. I don't care if it was with a man, a woman, or whoever. She went behind my back, lied to me, and expected me to just deal with it. How the hell is that any different? Steve sighed, looking down at his drink like he was tired of the conversation. I just think you're being too harsh, man. You're throwing away 12 years over something she's struggling with. That's when I realized it. Most people weren't going to see it from my side. Tracy had spun the whole situation to make herself look like the victim, and people were eating it up. She was confused, lost, trying to figure out her sexuality, and apparently, that made cheating understandable to them. Well, I'm not willing to be a backup plan, I muttered, standing up to leave. If that makes me the bad guy, then so be it. Steve didn't argue. He just shrugged, and I walked out of the bar, feeling more alone than ever. It got worse at family events. Tracy and I shared the same social circles, so avoiding her wasn't an option. The first time I saw her and Kate together after everything had gone down was at our daughter's birthday party. They showed up together, and Kate had the nerve to act like nothing had changed. Tracy didn't even try to hide it. She acted like what she did was normal, like we were all supposed to just accept this new version of her life without question. I kept my distance, focused on the kids, but it was impossible not to feel that familiar rage bubbling up again. Seeing them together, laughing and talking like they were proud of what they had done, it made my blood boil. At one point, Tracy came over, pulling me aside like we were still on good terms. "Ron, I know this is hard, but we can still be friends. For the girls." I stared at her, barely able to keep it together. "Friends? You think I want to be friends with you after what you did?" She sighed, like I was being unreasonable. "We have to be civil for the kids, Ron." I wanted to laugh, but all I could do was shake my head. Being civil is one thing. But don't expect me to act like nothing happened. You blew up our life, Tracy. You don't get to walk away with everything and then ask me to play nice. She didn't say anything after that, just gave me this sad look, like I was the one being difficult. And maybe that's how she saw it. Maybe that's how everyone saw it. But I didn't care. I wasn't going to pretend like what she did was okay, not for her, not for Kate, and not for anyone else who wanted to make excuses for her. Over time, the people who sided with her stopped calling, stopped inviting me out, and it was clear I was being shut out. But the worst part was knowing that my daughters had to grow up watching all of this. Seeing me and their mom torn apart, and not understanding why. The hardest part was keeping it together for my daughters. They didn't understand why things were falling apart between me and Tracy, why mommy and daddy weren't getting along. At first, I tried to shield them from it, but how do you explain to two little girls that their mom had blown up our family? After that birthday party, I realized something had to change. Tracy and Kate started showing up together more often, school events, soccer games, even family holidays. They acted like they were some kind of happy couple, while I was just supposed to sit there and deal with it. I couldn't do it. Every time I saw them together, it was like a punch to the gut. The betrayal was still fresh, and I couldn't pretend it wasn't killing me inside. At Thanksgiving, things reached a boiling point. Tracy and Kate showed up at my parents' house, like nothing was wrong. My family was polite, but I could tell everyone was uncomfortable. Kate stuck to Tracy's side like glue, and I could barely eat, my stomach in knots the entire time. My mom pulled me aside at one point. "Ron, I know this is hard, but for the girl's sake, maybe you should try to make peace with it. Peace? How could I make peace with the fact that my wife had destroyed our marriage and now paraded her new relationship around in front of everyone like it was normal? I didn't say that to my mom though. I just nodded and tried to get through the rest of the night without snapping. After dinner, Tracy came over to talk again. Ron, can we please figure out a way to get along? I don't want the girls to suffer because of this. I clenched my fists, trying to keep my cool. You think I want them to suffer? This isn't on me, Tracy. You're the one who put us here. She looked frustrated, like I wasn't getting her point. I know, okay? I know I hurt you, but we need to move forward. I want to be civil. Civil, that word again. Like if she said it enough times, it would erase everything that happened. I'll be civil for the kids, I said, my voice low. But don't expect me to be okay with any of this. Tracy sighed and walked away, probably annoyed that I wasn't ready to just forgive and forget. But I couldn't. Not when I was still drowning in the mess she'd made. Christmas came, and it was the same story. Tracy and Kate together, everyone pretending it wasn't awkward. I started to feel like a stranger in my own life. My daughters were happy, or at least they seemed to be. That's what kept me going, seeing them smile, trying to give them as much normalcy as I could, even if I wasn't feeling it myself. But the bitterness? That stuck with me, long after the holidays. It wasn't just Tracy's betrayal anymore, it was how everyone else seemed to expect me to get over it. Like what she did with some phase, and I was the one being stubborn for not moving on. I couldn't help it. The hurt didn't just go away because time passed, and the more I tried to push it down, the more it ate at me. Years went by, and while I kept a good relationship with my daughters, things with Tracy stayed cold. We barely spoke unless it was about the kids, and even then, it was quick and to the point. I distanced myself from her and Kate as much as possible, but it was hard when they were still such a big part of my daughters' lives. Then one day, I got a call that threw everything back in my face. Kate had been diagnosed with leukemia, and she needed a bone marrow transplant. Guess who was a match? I remember getting that call like it was yesterday. It came out of the blue, like a punch I didn't see coming. I was at home, just minding my own business, when Tracy called. The sound of her voice immediately put me on edge, but there was something different this time, an urgency I hadn't heard in years. Ron, she started, her voice shaking a little. I need to talk to you. It's about Kate. I didn't even want to hear her name, but something in Tracy's tone made me pause. What about her? I asked, not really sure why I was even engaging in the conversation. She's sick. It's bad, Ron. Leukemia, Tracy said, her voice breaking on the last word. Leukemia. For a second, I didn't know how to respond. The news hit like a ton of bricks, but not in the way you'd expect. I didn't feel sadness or worry for Kate. Instead, I felt nothing. It was strange, almost cold, like I couldn't even bring myself to care about what was happening to her. Tracy went on. She needs a bone marrow transplant. We've been trying to find a match, and, Ron, you're a match. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Of all the people in the world, it had to be me? I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. Life has a sick sense of humor sometimes. So what? You want me to save her life now? I said, my voice flat, not betraying the storm that was starting to brew inside me. Yes, Ron, she pleaded. I know you're still angry, but this is life or death. Kate, she needs this. Please. I felt the weight of her words hanging in the air, but I wasn't moved. Not the way she wanted me to be. After everything Tracy and Kate had done, after the way they blew up my life, now I was supposed to swoop in and save the day? Let me get this straight, I said slowly, trying to hold back the anger boiling under the surface. After all the lies, all the cheating, you expect me to put my life on hold and save Kate? Tracy didn't answer right away. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, probably trying to figure out what to say to convince me. Ron, I know you're still hurt, but this isn't about that. This is someone's life. Yeah, Tracy. Her life, I spat, my voice rising. The same woman who helped you destroy our marriage. The one who was perfectly fine letting me be the last to know. And now you want me to care? To help her? She's changed, Tracy said, her voice almost desperate. Things are different now. We've been through a lot, Ron. And I know you hate her, but please. This isn't about us. It's about saving a life. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After all the betrayal, now I was supposed to forget it all and be the bigger person? I felt my hands trembling, not from sadness or sympathy, but from pure anger. I wasn't going to do it. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me again. No, I said, cold and final. I'm not doing it. Find someone else. Ron, please think about the girls, she begged. They love Kate. This will destroy them. The girls. Of course she'd bring them up. That was her way of twisting the knife, making me feel like the bad guy if I didn't agree. But I wasn't going to be manipulated this time. I'm thinking about the girls, I said, my voice tight. And I'm not going to save the life of someone who tore our family apart. Tracy started to cry, but I didn't care. I was done with the guilt, done with the manipulation. You made your choice, Tracy. And now I've made mine. I hung up the phone and felt the weight of my decision settle in. I knew this wasn't over. I knew there would be fallout. But in that moment, I didn't care. I had made my choice, and I wasn't going to back down. It wasn't long before the fallout hit. My daughters, when they found out I refused to help, were devastated. They didn't understand, and I wasn't sure how to explain it to them. All they saw was their dad refusing to save someone they cared about. But I couldn't do it. I just couldn't. The rift between me and my girls grew, and even though it tore me apart, I stood firm. I wasn't going to give in, not after everything that had happened. I had my reasons, and even if no one else understood them, I did. The fallout came quicker than I expected. After that call with Tracy, it didn't take long before my daughters found out I'd refused to help Kate. They were heartbroken. I'll never forget the look in their eyes the first time they confronted me about it. It wasn't just sadness, it was disappointment. Dad, why won't you help her? My youngest, Abby, asked, her voice trembling. She's sick. You can save her. My chest tightened, seeing her like that. She was only 11, too young to understand the full story. Too young to understand the pain I'd been carrying all these years. But I couldn't just tell her, your mom destroyed our family with this woman, and now you want me to be her savior? She wouldn't get it. All she knew was that her dad was choosing not to help someone she loved. I know it's hard, sweetheart, I said, crouching down to her level. But this is complicated. It's not that simple. But you can save her, Dad, my older daughter, Emma, cut in. She was more direct, more mature, but I could see she was just as hurt. You can, but you're choosing not to. Why? I swallowed hard, trying to find the right words. Because, it's not that I don't care about her being sick. But there are things between me and your mom, and Kate, that you don't understand. Things that happened before this. Emma crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing. But that doesn't matter now. Kate's going to die if she doesn't get help. And you're just going to let that happen. The way she said it, like I was some heartless monster, cut deep. It felt like I was being torn in two. On one hand, I had all this anger and bitterness built up from Tracy's betrayal, from Kate being part of that mess. But on the other hand, my daughters, the only thing I had left from my marriage, were standing in front of me, begging me to do something I couldn't bring myself to do. I'm sorry, I whispered, my voice barely audible. I just can't. Abby burst into tears, and Emma shook her head, her face hardening. I don't get it. How can you say you love us and not care about saving someone we love? Those words hit me like a freight train. I tried to explain, but the more I spoke, the more I realized there wasn't a way to make them see my side. In their eyes, I was abandoning someone they cared about, someone who had become a part of their lives, no matter how much I hated it. I do love you, I said, desperate for them to understand. But this is something between me and your mom. It's complicated. Emma stared at me, her face cold. It's not complicated, Dad. It's really simple. You're just being selfish. And with that she walked away, pulling Abby along with her, leaving me standing there, feeling more alone than I had in years. After that, things between me and my girls were never the same. They stopped coming around as much, stopped calling as often. Whenever I did see them, there was this wall between us, like they couldn't fully trust me anymore. Like I had let them down in a way that couldn't be fixed. I wanted to tell them everything, to make them understand why I couldn't bring myself to help Kate. But every time I thought about it, I stopped. They didn't need to be burdened with a mess between me and Tracy. They were innocent in all of this, and I didn't want to drag them deeper into the bitterness and anger that had consumed me for years. But as time went on, I started to wonder if I'd made the right choice. Not about refusing to help Kate, that decision felt final, but about holding on to the anger for so long. I had spent years resenting Tracy, hating Kate for being part of the reason my marriage fell apart. And now, even after all that time, it was still controlling my life. I wasn't just angry at them anymore, I was angry at myself, for letting it affect my relationship with my daughters, for letting it drive a wedge between us. But the bitterness had become so ingrained in me, I didn't know how to let it go. I'd made my choice, and I stood by it. But I couldn't help wondering, late at night when I was alone with my thoughts, if that choice would haunt me for the rest of my life. The days after that confrontation with my daughters were some of the loneliest I'd ever experienced. Every time I thought about how Abby cried and how Emma looked at me with disgust, it gnawed at me. They were everything to me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd lost them, all because I refused to give in and help Kate. I wanted to reach out, to explain everything again, but what was the point? In their eyes, I was the bad guy, the one who could have saved someone they cared about and chose not to. Every attempt at reaching out felt hollow. A couple of text messages here and there, but nothing real. Nothing that bridged the growing distance between us. Then came the day Tracy called me again. I didn't want to answer, didn't want to deal with her. But I picked up anyway, out of habit more than anything else. "Ron," she started, her voice softer this time, like she was trying to be careful. "I know things are hard right now, but I wanted to let you know. Kate's in the hospital. It's bad." I sat down, the weight of her words sinking in. "Is she?" "They don't know if she's going to make it," Tracy said, her voice cracking. "The doctors say it's a matter of days if she doesn't get the transplant." There it was. The final plea. Tracy hadn't called just to inform me, she was hoping I'd change my mind. Even after everything I'd said, even after I'd made it clear I wasn't going to help, she still thought she could get me to be the hero in all of this. "Ron, I'm not asking for me," she continued. "I'm asking for the girls. They're devastated. You know how much they love her." I closed my eyes, pinching the bridge of my nose as if that would somehow block out the emotions bubbling up. This wasn't just about Kate anymore. It wasn't even just about Tracy. It was about my daughters. They were caught in the middle of this mess, and they didn't deserve it. But I also knew I couldn't go back now. I couldn't just flip a switch and pretend like everything that happened didn't matter. Like the pain I carried for years didn't exist. "I already told you, Tracy." "I'm not doing it," I said, my voice firm, though it felt like the words were heavier than before. She was quiet for a moment, probably realizing this was her last shot. Then she spoke, and her words cut deeper than I expected. "Do you really want to lose the girls over this, Ron?" It felt like a punch to the gut. She knew exactly where to hit me. My daughters were all I had left. They were the only reason I hadn't completely fallen apart after the divorce. And now, because of this, I was at risk of losing them too. "I don't want to lose them," I said, my voice shaking with frustration. "But this isn't on me. This is on you, Tracy. You made this mess, not me." I know," she said quickly. "But they don't see it that way. All they know is that you can help someone they love, and you're choosing not to. They don't understand everything that happened between us. They're too young for that." The anger was rising again, but it was mixed with something else, something closer to fear. She was right. They didn't understand the full picture, and part of me knew they never would. They were kids, and kids don't see the world through the same lens as adults. All they saw was their dad being stubborn, refusing to help save someone who, in their eyes, was part of the family. "You think this fixes everything?" I asked, my voice low. "If I donate, you think they'll just forgive me? That this will magically make everything better?" Tracy sighed. "I don't know, Ron. But I know it'll mean something to them. They need you to do this. If not for Kate, then for them." For a brief second, I considered it. I thought about how easy it would be to say yes, to go through with a transplant, and maybe, just maybe, repair the damage between me and my daughters. But then the memories came flooding back. The lies, the betrayal, the way Tracy and Kate had ripped apart everything we'd built. And I couldn't do it. I just couldn't. "I'm sorry, Tracy," I said, my voice hardening. But my answer's still no. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Tracy spoke again, her voice was flat, defeated. "I hope you know what this is going to cost you." "I do," I said quietly, before hanging up. I sat there for a long time after that, staring at the phone, wondering if I'd made the right choice. It didn't feel good. Nothing about this felt good. But I couldn't bring myself to back down. Not after everything that had happened. And that's when I knew deep down that no matter what, this choice was going to haunt me for the rest of my life. The days after that final call with Tracy felt like a blur. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just slammed a door that might never open again, especially with my daughters. Every time my phone buzzed, I half hoped it was one of them reaching out, ready to forgive me, to understand. But the silence was deafening. Then, a week later, the news I knew was coming finally hit. Tracy called again, but this time it wasn't a plea. It was to let me know Kate was gone. "Ron, she passed this morning," Tracy said quietly. There was no anger in her voice, no pleading. Just a hollow sadness that hung between us. "The girls are devastated." I took a deep breath, gripping the phone tight. I should have felt something. Sadness? Relief? Guilt? But all I felt was numb. I had known this moment was coming, and yet now that it was here, I didn't know how to react. "I'm sorry for them," I managed to say, because honestly, that's all I could say. "I'm having the funeral next week," Tracy continued, her voice wavering. "I'd like you to be there. The girls, they need you." Her words hung in the air, heavy with expectation. The girls needed me, but after everything that had happened, would they even want me there? Would they look at me with that same disappointment in their eyes, like I'd failed them? "I don't know, Tracy," I muttered. "I'm not sure if—" "Ron, please," she interrupted. "If you don't come, it'll only make things worse. They need to see that you still care. Even if you didn't help Kate, they need to know you're still their dad. Please." I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to just avoid the whole thing, let Tracy and the girls grieve without me getting in the way. But the other part, the part that still loved my daughters more than anything, knew I couldn't stay away. No matter what had happened, they were still my girls, and I couldn't let them think I didn't care. "I'll be there," I finally said, the words heavy with the weight of everything that had happened. "Thank you," Tracy whispered before hanging up. The day of the funeral came, and I felt like I was walking into enemy territory. As I pulled up to the small church, I saw Tracy standing with the girls, both of them clinging to her like their world had just collapsed. And in a way, it had. Kate had been part of their lives for years now, and no matter how I felt about her, she was someone they loved. When they saw me, Abby's face lit up for a second, like maybe, just maybe, she was glad I came. But Emma, her expression was harder to read. She looked at me with guarded eyes, like she wasn't sure what to feel. I walked over to them, feeling like a stranger in my own family. "Hey girls," I said softly, unsure of what else to say. Abby immediately hugged me, burying her face in my chest. "I'm glad you came, Dad," she whispered, her voice thick with tears. "I didn't think you would." I held her close, feeling a lump rise in my throat. "Of course I came, sweetie. I'll always be here for you." But Emma just stood there, watching, her arms crossed. She didn't move to hug me, didn't say anything at first. Finally, she spoke, her voice quiet but sharp. "Why couldn't you help her, Dad?" That question. The one I'd been dreading. The one I had no real answer for. I started, but the words wouldn't come. How could I explain that it wasn't about Kate anymore, that it was about everything that happened years before? How could I make her understand the anger, the betrayal, the hurt that had been festering for so long? "You could have saved her," Emma continued, her voice trembling now. "But you didn't." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "I know it seems that way, Emma, but there's more to it than that." "What's more to it?" she snapped, tears filling her eyes. "She's dead now. You could have stopped it." It felt like a knife in the gut. I reached out, wanting to comfort her, but she stepped back, her face twisted in pain. "You didn't even try, Dad. You didn't even try." The look on her face was one I'd never forget. It was a mix of anger, sadness, and betrayal. She didn't just see me as her dad anymore. She saw me as the man who let someone she loved die. "I'm sorry," I whispered, knowing it wasn't enough. Emma shook her head and turned away, walking back to Tracy without another word. Abby stayed close to me, but even her small comfort couldn't erase the feeling that I had lost something with Emma that day, something I might never get back. The funeral was a blur. I sat through the service, listening to people talk about Kate like she was a saint. But all I could think about was the damage I'd caused with my daughters, the rift that had formed because of the choices I'd made. Choices I still wasn't sure were right or wrong. Afterward, I stood alone in the parking lot, watching as Tracy and the girls left together. Emma didn't look back at me once. And that's when I knew that the real cost of my decision wasn't losing Tracy or Kate. It was losing the one thing that mattered more to me than anything else: my daughters. The days after the funeral were quiet. Too quiet. I didn't hear from Emma or Abby, and every time I looked at my phone, I half expected a message or call that never came. I'd lost touch with them, and I didn't know how to fix it. One night, I was sitting in my living room, staring blankly at the TV when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Abby. "Dad, can we talk?" I felt a wave of relief wash over me. At least one of them still wanted to talk to me. I quickly replied, "Of course. Call me any time." Minutes later, my phone rang. Hearing Abby's voice felt like a lifeline. We talked for a while, mostly about how she was feeling, how things were at home. She didn't bring up Kate or the funeral, and for that, I was grateful. She was still my little girl, the one who didn't let all the anger and messiness of the situation poison her love for me. But Emma? She was another story. I asked Abby about her, and there was a long pause. "She's still really mad, Dad," Abby finally said. "She doesn't understand why you didn't help Kate." I sighed, rubbing my temples. "I know. I didn't know how to explain it to her." "She misses you," Abby said quietly. "Even if she's mad. She just doesn't know how to deal with it." That hit me hard. Emma wasn't just angry, she was hurting. And I realized, as much as I'd been trying to protect myself from more pain, I'd been pushing her away too. "I miss her too, Abby," I said, my voice thick. "I don't know how to fix this. I think you just need to try, Dad. She might not forgive you right away, but she will if you keep showing her you're still here." After I hung up, I sat there for a long time, thinking about what Abby had said. I hadn't tried with Emma, not really. I'd let the guilt and bitterness eat away at me, and in doing so, I'd lost her. The next day, I sent Emma a text. Just a simple, "I love you, and I'm here when you're ready." It wasn't much, but it was a start. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like maybe there was still a chance to mend what had been broken. Days passed, and I kept waiting for a response from Emma. Every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was her, but nothing came. Still, I kept trying. I sent her texts every few days, nothing heavy, just small reminders that I was still here. A "thinking of you" or "hope you're doing okay." I didn't want to push too hard, but I couldn't let her slip away either. One afternoon, Abby called me again. She was keeping the lines open, making sure I didn't completely lose touch with them both. We talked about school, her friends, normal things. It was good to hear her voice, but as usual, the conversation circled back to Emma. "She saw your texts, Dad," Abby said quietly. "She's just not ready to talk yet." I sighed. "Do you think she'll ever be ready?" "I don't know," Abby admitted, her voice small. "She's really hurt, and I think she just doesn't know how to deal with it. She misses you, though." "I know she does." That gave me a little hope, but it also reminded me of just how fragile things were. I wanted to rush in, to fix everything, but I knew it wasn't that simple. Emma needed time, and I had to respect that, no matter how hard it was. A week later, I got an unexpected call from Tracy. It had been a while since I'd heard from her, and I wasn't sure I wanted to answer. But something told me I needed to. "Ron," she started, her tone softer than I expected. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened. About everything, really." I didn't say anything, just let her talk. "I know things got messy between us," she continued. "And I know you're angry. But I want you to know, for what it's worth, that I never wanted things to end this way. Not for us, not for the girls." I could feel a familiar knot forming in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. "Yeah, well, things don't always turn out the way we want, do they?" She paused, then said, "I want Emma to have a relationship with you. I've been talking to her, and I think she's starting to understand that this isn't all on you." That took me by surprise. Tracy had never really admitted fault before, not like this. But I wasn't sure if it was too little, too late. "Maybe," I said, not fully convinced. "But she's still angry. I don't know if she'll ever see me the same way again." "I think she will," Tracy replied softly. "Just give her time." Time. That's all anyone seemed to say lately. But maybe they were right. Maybe that's all I could give. After we hung up, I felt this strange mix of emotions: relief, anger, sadness, hope. Everything was tangled up inside me, and I wasn't sure what to make of it. But Tracy's words stuck with me. Maybe Emma was starting to see things differently. Maybe, just maybe, there was a path forward. That night, I sent Emma another text. This one was a little longer than the others. I know you're still upset with me, and I get it. I'm sorry for how everything turned out, but I want you to know that I love you, no matter what. I'm here when you're ready to talk. I didn't expect a reply, but the next morning, there it was. I know, Dad. I just need time. It wasn't much, but it was enough. For the first time in months, I felt like there was a chance, however small, that we could rebuild. It was going to take a lot of work, and a lot of patience, but I wasn't giving up. Not on my daughter. A few days after Emma's message, I finally felt like there was a glimmer of hope. It wasn't much, but knowing she acknowledged me, even just with "I need time," was enough to keep me going. I didn't want to push her, so I gave her space, only sending the occasional text to remind her I was here. Abby kept calling, filling me in on how Emma was doing, but she didn't push either. She understood how fragile the situation was. One afternoon, out of the blue, Emma texted me. "Hey Dad." That was it. Just 2 words, but it felt like a door opening. I didn't want to overthink it, so I replied simply, "Hey, how are you?" "I'm okay," she wrote back. "Just needed to talk. Maybe we could meet up sometime." My heart skipped a beat. I'd been waiting for this, and now here it was. "Of course," I typed quickly. "Whenever you're ready." It wasn't a full reconciliation. It wasn't a guarantee everything would go back to normal. But it was a step toward rebuilding what I thought was lost forever. And for now, that was enough. A few days after that message, Emma and I met at a small coffee shop near her school. I was nervous, more nervous than I had been in a long time. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew I couldn't mess this up. When I walked in, Emma was already sitting at a table, staring at her phone. She looked up when I approached, and for the first time in months, she gave me a small smile. It wasn't much, but it felt like a lifeline. "Hey," I said, sitting down across from her. "Thanks for meeting me." She nodded, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I just wanted to talk. I've been thinking a lot." We both sat there for a moment, the air thick with all the things left unsaid. I didn't know how to start, so I just let her lead. "I was really mad at you," Emma finally said, her voice soft but steady. "I couldn't understand why you didn't help Kate. It just felt like you were letting us down." "I know," I replied quietly. "I never wanted to hurt you or Abby. I was so caught up in everything that happened between me and your mom, I couldn't see past it. But that doesn't mean I don't love you. I always will." She looked down at her coffee, her fingers tracing the edge of the cup. "I still don't get it, Dad. But I guess I'm trying to." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "That's all I can ask for, Emma. I'm just glad we're talking again." We sat there for a while longer, talking about little things, school, her friends, stuff we hadn't shared in what felt like forever. It wasn't a deep conversation, but it didn't need to be. We were rebuilding, slowly, and that was enough. When it was time to go, Emma stood up and hugged me. It wasn't the same as before, but it was real. "I'm not ready to forget everything, but I don't want to be mad at you forever," she whispered. I hugged her back, my voice thick with emotion. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here." As I watched her walk away, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Things weren't perfect, but for the first time since everything had fallen apart, I believed they could be okay again. And that was enough. For now.